SBC Media.
Welcome to iGaming Daily, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe. Supported by SBC Summit Barcelona, the industry-leading conference bringing you the future of sports betting and iGaming.
SBC Summit Barcelona is where you can experience the global industry coverage under one roof. Expect an industry-leading conference agenda covering all verticals across 7 stages, a huge trade show floor filled with over 3,000 exhibitors, and luxury networking events at premium venues in one of Europe's coolest cities. Join 10,000 executives this September at the event drawing the industry's eyes. Get your tickets now at sbcevents.com.
To the surprise of industry observers, Italy's government has sanctioned a decree to reorganise the laws of the gambling sector. Positive prospects appear on the horizon for Italian gambling, once considered the basket case of European market jurisdictions. How will the government's special delegation approach fixing Italian gambling's decade-long conflicts, impacting licensing, regulatory governance, and the market's consumer transition from retail to online? I'm Martyn Elliott, and joining me for today's Italian-themed edition of iGaming Daily are Ted Menmuir, SBC's Content Director, and Ted Orme-Claye, Senior Business Journalist for SBC News and Lottery Daily. Hi Ted, how are you?
Bravo, Martyn. Very well, very well. Great introduction.
And how are you doing, Ted?
I'm also good, thank you, Martyn. Feeling fresh after a weekend, ready to take on another week.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. So we're discussing the latest updates in the Italian market today, and what some might describe as a bit of shock news coming out of Italy, in keeping with a lot of what's happened since Giorgia Meloni took charge in Italy. Something a little bit more sensible than expected has happened. So, it's positive news, Ted. How surprised are you by the update that has come out of the authorities there?
Okay, yes, this is surprising news. And I think if you look at Italy, it's been a market that's been in rupture for 10 years. But what it underlines is that there is a political will to change gambling's laws and to fix these issues. Finally, it's on the table. And it looks like the government are going to push on it, and you will get some settlement, some regulatory settlement in 2023. So it's positive overall.
Great. And what are your thoughts on it, Ted?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, got to agree with Ted. It's looking very positive. It is also somewhat of a surprise given that, as we've mentioned, the sort of tricky state Italian betting and gambling has been in for a while. And in the past, there's been some political deadlock over progressing reforms, moving reforms forward. The announcement that they were going to move ahead with some reforms was made last month, I think, and now they've announced what exactly is going to take place, which I think, given some of the past political problems, was surprising to some people. But overall, I think everyone's going to look at this in a very positive manner.
Do either of you have any insights into why they've decided to act now after such a long state of, well, not chaos, that would be exaggerating a bit, but a long period of uncertainty?
Okay, look, uncertainty governs Italian politics. You're talking about a country that's had 6 government changes in a decade. So it's very hard and at that, 6 kind of coalition governments, right? So it's very hard to actually get kind of any federal laws passed in Italy. The other thing is that I think Italy kind of realizes that it has, the political consensus is there that it has to progress the laws for an industry. They're outdated. They need a lot of domestic businesses need transparency on licensing and where they stand. There's been a decade-long conflict, legal battles after legal battles on the licensing, the relationship with the ADM. So there's so many points of conflict in the Italian market that it had to come to this point. And I think the Meloni government at the start of the year, now the way the decree got passed with the budget law, So it's attached to a much wider package in which the government recognises that it has to update laws for the gambling industry. It's now or never really for Italy.
I think I might add to that there's just some recognition of how much of a significant sector Italian gambling is to the wider economy, as in other countries that's becoming increasingly recognised across Europe. Contributes 11 billion euros annually to the Italian economy, and in order to maintain the stability of that sector, it needs to have some of these updated laws, and particularly around licensing and the financial modelling of the sector.
Okay, so given that Italian government in general and Italian sort of regulation is proven so, how should we put this, subject to change at short notice over the past few years, what measures has the current government put into place to deliver these changes in the gambling sector?
Okay, so the special delegation is being led by Deputy Minister for the Economy, Martyn. He took charge of this remit at the start of January. And the revisions, its primary focus, as expected, is to rebalance the gambling laws. But also, so he's putting, we're going to see player protection at the front of this. Also to sort out the licensing concessions for Italian retail gambling. But the other thing that kind of underlines the market is the transition that we saw. So, as well documented, Italy was impacted severely by the pandemic. It had the harshest lockdown for 2 years, and in that period, not only gaming, but what it reflected was the transition of the Italian consumer from being very much a retail proposition, but from very much a retail environment to an online environment. So again, this is the part of the Italian economy transitioning towards its new habitat.
Yeah, I think that's undeniable, really. Yeah, that it's Italy, like many other countries, is increasingly moving away from sort of the retail avenue of betting towards the digital. And you're seeing that in some of the market makeup of some of the some of the companies that are involved in there. Lottomatica have been making moves to boost their digital presence. You've had Flutter come in and acquire Sisal. Obviously, Flutter, huge digital brand across Europe with the Paddy Power, Betfair, Sky Bet Holdings, and so on. And we're now seeing Flutter actually make some quite significant moves with Sisal as well, both in Italy and internationally. You also got like Entane's BWin brand active there. So if you just look at the firms making up the Italian market, it's very reflective of what Ted said with this shift from retail to digital. And that has obviously fueled quite a strong desire among government and among the regulatory side of things to make sure the laws reflect that.
So there's been a fairly long-standing conflict around the issue of licensing, and in particular, licensing for retail bookmakers in Italy. What prospect is there of this change bringing that conflict to an end?
Okay, so answering this question, I think you got to kind of review the past kind of 10 years of Italian gambling, its conflict with the government, but especially also Italian gambling has kind of remained stagnant for the past decade. The way it's been governed by the ADM, and it's not governed by a central kind of resource such as the UK Gambling Commission. It's governed by the Customs Agency. And the way it's kind of processed, it's always processed its licenses out in a batch. This has caused a number of legal battles with the operators, and saying like, look, they want a certified guarantee that they can enter the market, that they're not restricted to access, and also within itself, it's the remit of how Italy's state legislature, as in how it passes laws federally versus provincially across its regions. So there's always been a clash of elements going on the licensing of Italian gambling. Now, finally, after kind of 10 years, there is a political will to kind of sort this out and say, look, this is an industry that contributes a lot of money to taxes. Its players that are both foreign and domestic need a certainty that these are the laws that will underline the market for the next years, and also to kind of handle that transition online. So again, hopefully this government stands. It's in place to see this procedure through. Only time will tell.
Yeah, I think Ted's hit the nail on the head there. I'm not really too sure what much I can add to that, obviously, other than the fact, the licensing conflict has been a really defining part of sort of the debate and the political relationship that Italian gambling has had with the government. I know it was quite a big moment under the last administration before they called their snap election. It was quite a big talking point there. And now that there seems to be a little more political stability, hopefully they'll be able to resolve this issue for the benefit of the market and the economy as a whole. But as Ted said, we're just going to have to wait and see. Only time will tell.
Okay, so another big area of conflict between the industry and the authorities has been sort of the ban on advertising, and in particular around sort of sports sponsorships. Do you think there's any prospect now of that ban being withdrawn? Could we see a return to bookmakers on the front of Serie A shirts?
It's an interesting question because obviously there's quite a few different stakeholders involved in this one. I know that Italian football clubs have been calling for a review of the advertising ban for some time because, as in other countries, the revenue from these sponsorship deals and advertising deals has been quite significant to them. At the moment, though, I don't really see the advertising ban being factored into the political discussion and the production of these new regulatory adjustments. I think for the moment it's going to focus primarily on the licensing and financial side of things. The advertising debate is just might come in later, but as I said, there's so many different stakeholders to factor into this one that it makes it a bit more even more multi-layered, I think. I'm sure Ted has some stuff to add on that.
I think the special delegation will touch on it, and what is recognised is that it hasn't worked. It's really, really impacted the finances of Serie A, of sports clubs in general, but also of Italian media. And then the argument as a whole has changed on the advertising front. Mirroring Spain, that was more of a fix of the advertising code in itself rather than Italian audiences' exposure to gambling, which happens in other jurisdictions. I won't be surprised if the special delegation asks for a review on it, but whether the government proceed is another matter.
Yeah, well, I actually spoke to the chief exec of one of the big Italian operators fairly recently and asked him about this because there'd been some discussion driven more by the football authorities than by the gambling industry, and he said to me he thought there was no realistic prospect of that changing in the short term. But that was prior to the most recent announcements of this special delegation, so I guess time will tell. Now, one other sort of interesting thing that's going on in the Italian market is the consolidation of the players. We've seen several bits of M&A activity involving the biggest names in the market. So one other interesting thing that's happening in the Italian market is there's been a real sort of consolidation of the major players. There's been a lot of M&A activity recently. How do you think these proposals that have come out in the last few weeks might influence the market's thinking on the ownership and the future of these big players?
We touched on this a little bit earlier. The one of the sort of the big defining consumer changes in Italy has been the shift from retail to online, similar to other markets, and that's really reflected in how the market's consolidation of players. You've got a lot of Matica who are increasingly turning digital, and they're now going for they've been going for this IPO. Flutter bought out Sisal, who were one of the as you said, Martyn, this sort of flurry of M&A activity, that was probably the most defining one out of all of those. And yeah, Sisal, big digital operator there. You've got Entain's Bwin as well, as I said earlier. And I think, yeah, that's obviously what's influenced a lot of the regulation. If the regulator, and then in turn, depending how the regulations turn out, that could just further enhance that shift towards digital and really play into a lot of the online focused operators' hands. Obviously, like with other countries, though, retail's still big in Italy. I think, is it Planet Win 365 are quite big there with quite a bit of strong sort of high street presence. I hope I've got that one right. So yeah, it will still continue. Retail will still continue there, but I mean, yeah, like with other countries, it's increasingly heading towards the online vertical.
I think, put simply, look, Italy is a basket case market, yes, but it's a lucrative market, and it does appeal to the international players. I mean, Flutter, they wouldn't have spent $2 billion to taking over Sisal. It gets them to the lottery scene as well. I think that it's a market that if you are a serious European operator, you've got to be involved in. And then the transition here is, I think it's heading towards foreign operators strong on the online element going up against strong domestic brands. So there is a lot of opportunity for market share gains in Italy, regardless of just ongoing regulatory disruptions and political change, which, I'm sorry, it's just part of the game in Italy.
So it's that time again, and I make no apologies for this. I'm asking you to get your crystal ball out again, and can you tell me, do you think this is another false dawn for Italian gambling?
At the moment, I'm leaning towards no. I don't think it's a false dawn. My gut's telling me sort of slightly that I think this is looking positive. It looks like progress is on the horizon. Although, as Ted has pointed out, you can never fully predict what the political situation might be like, what developments could happen. So, yeah, obviously, really, it's just a waiting game. We're just gonna have to wait and see. But I'm leaning more towards that. I think this is gonna something's gonna come about from this.
No, I don't think this is gonna be a false dawn. But then the other thing here is, I think you have to be kind of reflective of what is the Italian market. And I remember kind of like 4 years ago when when Italy were the first country to enforce a blanket ban on gambling advertising. And at the time, people thought, well, that's not going to happen to other markets, and how wrong we were there. So I always think kind of Italy is a market that has to be observed. It does have, a very big influence. And the other thing is that, when we talk about kind of political upheaval, now that's just part of the process across so many countries in Europe at the moment. So that's something that the industry has to live with and adapt to. And it's not just an Italian case in itself. But I think Italy are going in the right direction with their 2023 reforms. So it's a positive note for the industry.
That's great. Always nice to finish on a positive. So thank you both for joining us today. And you can follow all the latest developments on the Italian market at SBC News as normal, including coverage of Lottomatica's results later this week. And for more news and insights on the global gaming industry, join us for another episode of iGaming Daily tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of iGaming Daily, brought to you in conjunction with SBC Summit Barcelona, being held at the Fira Barcelona Montjuic on the 19th to the 21st of September. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network, or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.